Welcome to another edition of the Committed 100 Ministry Group, where I am 100% committed to teaching the Bible to those who are 100% committed to learn. And we're going to get back into our study in the Book of Proverbs, chapter 14. Of course, looking at the contrast between the righteous and the wicked. And of course, the Book of Proverbs teaches us the wisdom of God in the life of the worshiper of God. I just realized something a few minutes ago. I actually started the program 4 minutes too early. I guess I got excited or nervous or whatever. I was just unconscious of the time. So my apology. I'm going to actually wait a few minutes for everyone else time-wise to get on board before I get started, because it wouldn't be fair to them. But it has been a wonderful blessing, of course, to be with all of you in regards to teaching the Word of God. And as I've said over the last few weeks, the format is changed over to YouTube, seeing that Facebook is going to be eliminating all of the saved messages from every platform. There are a number of people that think that this is just an attack against the church, and that's not true. They're deleting everybody's saved messages. They're not going after any particular group. They're going to eliminate everyone's saved messages. And there's a sense in which I might agree with that. I mean, Facebook has, stored my messages since 2010, I think, since I've been here 10 or 12. So there are a lot of messages that are still there. And of course, nobody's watching them. And so I don't blame them for, being very wise in terms of their own storage and dumping videos that just sit there and collect internet dust, as it were. So I think they're right, and they're in their right to eliminate a lot of stored videos. So I don't fault them on that at all. I think it's, a good idea for them to do it. And I've done a lot of that throughout the years. I would just erase videos and what have you. But I think the policy is going to be they're only going to allow videos to stay on that platform for a month. They figured if you didn't watch it for in the last 30 days, then maybe it wasn't essential. The downside, of course, is that this software that I use, OBS software, to actually do the production, the TV stuff, and the transitions and what have you, they're not allowing any what's called third-party software. So once that took place, that eliminated the whole idea of being able to do Facebook Live like we used to do it. And so, frankly, the better platform, I believe, is here with YouTube. We can save, I got sermons saved on YouTube forever, and they have no intention of deleting those at all. Not at this point. Of course, this is just today, because anything could change, but YouTube is very happy to be able to get the platforms and the creators of a lot of people because of Facebook's choices, whatever. And so it is officially 10:32. So I want to welcome Caleb and Jeremiah to the Committed 100 ministry group. These two young men were baptized yesterday, I believe, and also were two other young children were baptized in the name of Christ and are on their way to humbly following the Lord in obedience and in the church membership over at Liberty Baptist Church in Arley. Just amazing and wonderful. And I want to encourage those two young brothers, keep following hard after Christ no matter what, no matter what. And to encourage each other, be faithful to the church, be faithful to the pastor, above all, be faithful to the Lord, and everything else will take care of itself. So, welcome aboard to those who are new members to the Committed 100. I'm committed 100% to teaching the Bible to those who are 100% committed to learn. So, if you're 100% committed to learn, you're not going to have a problem. All right, Harley, let's get on with it. Proverbs chapter 14. Last time we left off, we looked at the fact that God views the despising of the poor or the belittling of the poor and the contempt towards poor people. Um, he looks at that because a person is poor, that we belittle that person. That whole mentality and mindset is nothing but sin. And we saw that clearly in the Epistle of James, and we'll see it again. Money does not make the character of a person any better, nor does a lack of money make the character of a person any worse. Being kind to the poor brings blessings from God. In fact, that's a very interesting truth I think a lot of us don't get, and that is helping the poor is a blessing, not only to the person, but it's a blessing also. It gives God glory. Now, let me define poor, and I've done this before, and I'm always being reminded to remind people, what do you define as this or that? The poor person is someone who, beyond their own ability or beyond their own circumstance, has wound up in a position where either loss of job, family members, whatever, they do not have the physical means, whether it's temporary or long term or permanent, to sustain their own life. And there are plenty of people, millions of people around the world, including here in America, that would be categorized as poor, not by their own foolishness. So I'm not talking about, these are the people we need to be helping. We know them. And let's start with people in the church, in our churches, our influence in the churches. If we have people we know are hurting in the body, we are commanded to take care of them. And as we saw in Acts chapter 6, many times the widows were being neglected in the daily administration. So every day the widows came to the church to get food. And the church was responsible for taking care of those widows indeed that didn't have the means to take care of themselves. And we see this attitude in the scriptures where no one said that whatever they had was their own, but they gave to everyone that had need. So that's the normal Christian life. So the idea that this is something so, so amazing and so marvelous and so exceptional, we ought to give praise to the person, is a lot of nonsense. It should be normal. And if we follow the model in scripture, it is normal. Now, who am I not talking about? The moochers, the people that are on the highways, in the streets, by the lights, and they got their, their baby holder, and oftentimes it's a doll or a dog or whatever, and they got a sign. I'm not going to give people that mooch money. I've been trapped 3 times by moochers, and that's the end. And we have to be discerning, but a lot of times that's nothing in the world but a scam. And you notice you'll have, if you travel down, let's say, Harbor Boulevard, you see one at MacArthur, one at Warner, and one in Seagram. It's all a game. That's how they make money. They make money by, well, disguised as people that are poor, and they're just collecting and raking in tons of money. I'm not talking about moochers, people that are lazy, people that don't want to work, people who, who are capable to work, but they just choose not to. And don't act like they're not those kinds of people out there. There are plenty of them. I find it very interesting that if you go down Harbor Boulevard and you reach MacArthur, you see a guy, he's out there begging. And then if you just happen to look to the left, you see a fast food joint said now hiring. So there are places that will hire, and it's a lot safer, of course, to get a job and to work and to actually be a part of society and helping society as well as helping yourself by getting a job. So that's my take on it. But the idea that we should despise and belittle the poor, that's sinful. And again, being kind to the poor brings blessings from God. And let me say this, don't do it for that reason. I'm going to help the poor because I'm going to get a, don't do that. If it's I'm going to get a, don't do anything okay? Just don't. If your motive in giving is you, don't give, okay? Proverbs 19:17, he that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. Okay, God's going to pay back those who help the poor. Okay, you're giving to the poor, you're lending to the Lord. He's using you as a means to carry out this will. It never ceases to amaze me that people, for some bizarre reason, don't think that God is going to use another individual or individuals to carry out his plan. Okay, so you see someone who is poor. You and I see someone who's poor. John talks about it. James talks about it in their epistles. In fact, John says you don't even have saving faith if you don't help those that have need. The love of God doesn't dwell in you at all. James basically says the same thing. Your faith, your same thing, in that your faith is worthless without works. And then he illustrates that by how we treat the poor as opposed to treating those that are rich. We show a bias towards those that are rich and despise the poor. James said, hath not God chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom? I mean, the rich people despise the saints. They despise the poor. So you got to have when you talk about a biblical worldview, I don't care about your biblical worldview if it isn't a biblical view. If it isn't clearly biblical, then forget about it. You're just talking nonsense. Proverbs 28:27. He that giveth unto the poor shall not lack, but he that hideth his eyes shall have many a curse. If you act as if the people who God places in your path, you are not obligated to help them, that is clearly a violation of the word of God. Clearly a violation. If you hide your eyes, God said you'll have many a curse. There's come a day that you're going to wish you had to help the poor. Another passage again in James, we should read this in connection with this idea of despising the poor. But be ye doers, that's James 1, verse 22. He says, be ye doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. You don't deceive anybody else, that's for sure. You're only deceiving yourself. That's what he says. And he says, for if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man holding or beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightway or immediately forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. That should go to every one of you so-called cussing Christians. You have a serious spiritual problem if you're using profanity, a very serious spiritual problem. You can't control your tongue. You don't have a handle on your tongue. Your religion is meaningless, according to the text. It's worthless. There are a lot of professing Christians that really need to get a handle on their tongue because their tongue gives them away. And it's very sad that we even have to say that, but, well, the Bible says it, and we have to say what God says. So he says, this man's religion is vain, means empty, useless, worthless, of no value. Now, look at what he says in contrast to vain religion. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted, okay, from the world. So people like to quote this passage, and of course they go to the latter part of it, but they just seem to forget the first part of it: to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. Now, I am very certain that I can probably say without fear of contradiction that some of us know someone who falls under that category. Okay, I without any doubt in my mind, I'm sure that we know someone who is a widow and a child who is fatherless. I'm sure that we know that. To visit the fatherless and the widows, I'm sure we know someone who falls under that category. How are we doing with that? That's pure religion. That's stated in contrast to the vanity of fake religion. Let's go back to the text because that's what matters. Okay, he says, if any man among you seem to be religious. And then in verse 27, pure religion contrasted against that which seems to be religious. He controls not his tongue. He is deceived in his own heart. This man's religion is useless. It's non existent. Let's put it that way. It doesn't exist. He can talk about religion all he wants, all she wants, but it's not there. Pure religion is frankly to help the poor, especially the fatherless and widows in their affliction, in their grief, in their pain. You know, it's one thing to go to someone's funeral, especially a wife who loses her husband, or even some cases the reverse. It's one thing to go to the funeral. And it's another thing even to bring food and, comfort at the moment. And maybe, a phone call or two during the first few weeks. And all that's well and good. But does that really fulfill what God says should be happening to the fatherless? I mean, how about those kids that don't have a dad? I don't mean some bum that, makes babies and leaves. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, we need to learn to read and stay within the context. Fatherless and the widows. A lot of children don't have dads because their dads have passed. What are we doing as a church? Do we embrace the kids? Do we help the kids? Listen, there used to be a time where we'd have, in fact, at Family of Faith, there was a time where we'd have kids that didn't have dads. And, my thought was, well, we brethren should be, go over and help the child and give that child not so much a father figure, but to help them, because boys need men in their lives. And we were doing some of that, but some of the sisters, so called, saw this as a means to get a boyfriend. And so I just cut the program altogether. We don't need that. There's some very horrible stories that went on with that. So we cut that program out because we weren't trying to supply a woman who didn't have a husband with a new boyfriend with a man. This was for the kid. This wasn't for her. And so she wasn't a widow indeed, obviously. She was one of the widows that Paul talks about in 1 Timothy chapter 5, what I call the swinging widow. She's one of these lust-driven widows. And Paul says, not only do not put her on the roll, but give her nothing. And he had some very choice words to say about the swinging widow. But we're talking about helping people that are truly poor. Now, verse 22, back to Proverbs 14. Do they not err that devise evil? But mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. Notice again the emphatic statement that the proverbist makes concerning those who plot evil. I want you to look very carefully. Do they not err that devise evil? They err because they go astray, they wander, they go in the path of moral deception. They're going in the wrong direction. There's no exception. And this is true of everyone who practices evil, who devises evil, who works at it. It is never right to do wrong ever. And I want to say this, and say it again, been saying it. You and I need to keep very, very close eyes on the company that we keep. I know sometimes it's often painful, whatever reason, for us to depart from certain people. But the fact is, some of these people we need to say goodbye to Jed and all his kin. We need to say goodbye to those people who are devising and scheming that which is wicked. We don't need to be around those people. People keep trying to convince you, well, I'm there because I'm trying to win into the Lord. I get it now. So what you're trying to tell me is you're going to win people to the Lord by disobeying what the Lord said. That's what you're basically saying. You're going to win people to the Lord by disobeying what the Lord said about being with people who are corrupt. Yeah, that makes sense. No, it does not. Why don't we try being obedient to God for a change? See how that works for all of us, okay? So be very careful of the company that you keep. Very much so. But in contrast to that, the person who practices righteousness will receive God's mercy. God's loyal love, his gracious love and goodness, which is the truth of God, will be given to an individual. If you want to have, and if I want to have the good life, and I'm not talking about materially, I'm talking about spiritually, do the simple. Stop evil, cease wickedness, do the good. There's no mystery about this. We have people in our company, we need to get away from them. They're not doing us any good at all. They never had. Sometimes we get involved, and usually it might be some family. We let these family ties keep us from obedience to God. We gotta stop that. We let so-called friends we grew up with, keep us from being obedient to God. We got to stop that. We can't keep justifying the thing that God says need to stop doing it. If he says we need to stop doing it, we shouldn't have started it. Okay? We shouldn't have done it. All right, let's move to the next point. In fact, as sure as the wicked err, and the results of that wandering from God is certain, so it is those who are righteous, who plan their lives to do righteous deeds. They will experience the loyal love of God and the goodness of God. Yeah, that's it. If you and I want to experience the goodness of God, well, do that which is right. Verse 23, Proverbs 14, about ready to wrap this up in a few. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury, or as we would say, being broke or busted. As it were, working without talking pays off with profit. Talking without working will produce poverty. There are a lot of folks who they don't like to work. They love to listen to the sound of their own mouths, but they're not doing anything. I grew up with people who spent a lot of time talking, trying to get over, trying to make a quick buck, trying to get a scheme going. I'm out there working when I'm 13 years old, busting my chops, working at a gas station, non-salary, working for tips. Yeah, I get it. I know what it means to work, and I've worked hard all my life because I was disciplined enough to do it. I wouldn't run around saying what I was going to do. Yeah, one day I'm going to you're going to be broke. You're busted now, and you're going to be busted later because you're not doing anything except using busted talk. Working without talking pays off with profit. Get your job, keep your mouth closed, and work. Be the best worker you can be. Limit your speech to that which is necessary for the job. We have to learn to discipline ourselves. Discipline our mouths, discipline our lives. Because we have a mouth doesn't mean it has to run all the time. Just because we have a mouth doesn't mean we have to respond to everything. And everybody's coming. We got to say something. You don't have to say anything. Just try practicing being quiet. How about that? I think a lot of people would appreciate it. Most of all, your boss. Talking without working will produce poverty. Notice the person on the job who will always talk about cutting corners to get things done with less labor. You put a mark on that person. And as I said, stay as far away from that person as humanly possible because they're the ones who are going to be in trouble. And if you're associated with them and you pick up those habits, you might be in trouble too. And that's the person that'll turn their back on you in a minute. We need to watch our company, need to watch ourselves, frankly. Notice the person on the job who boasts of how they can get over without working, but by manipulating others to do the work for him or her. That's another person you got to watch out for. That's the manipulator on the job. They're experts in getting others to do work for them while they sit and do a lot of yapping. Well, we got to learn how to go, no. Don't put yourself in a position where you're forced to do someone else's job because you know their character is one of laziness. Nope, not going to do it. Learn to say no. No is a complete sentence in many situations, and that would be one of them. Notice the person on the job who always complains about how difficult their work is when they do not work on their jobs. Oh, this job is so tough and the boss doesn't understand, and don't you agree with me? I'd be like, I don't even want to hear you. Let them talk. When they turn around, hello, where'd everybody go? Yeah, you just leave. Don't get involved in it. Don't criticize your boss to someone because that birdie will come back to haunt you. Shut up, do your job. Be the best you can be. If you got something to say about the boss, take time to get in the office with the boss and talk to him between you and the boss. That's it. Notice the person who has to have others to do their work for them because they are lazy. 99% of the time, when you have people who have to have others do their job, they're lazy. And I tell you, people didn't like me because I ain't doing it. My last job in particular, before I retired, I just said, look, I'm an old man and I'm not doing your job for you. I'm not going to do it. Either do it or get out the way and hire someone else to do it. But I got my own work to do. I'm not doing your job. And they would get upset. Do you think I cared about that? No. I got hired to do this job here. I didn't get hired to do this job, your job, and his job and her job. No, I'm not. Sometimes you have to put your foot down. Well, you're going to lose your job. Well, lose it. Lose it. It's better to lose a job with integrity than to keep a job being abused and used by other people. If they can't do their job, let them handle it. Don't you try to go in there. Listen to me. Listen to me. The second you help some people, listen to me. It's not 100%, but I've seen it happen. In fact, I experienced it. The minute you help some people on a job, they're going to expect that every day. They're going to expect it from you to help them. They don't want to do their job. They figure, well, if you're going to help me, then I'll just let you go ahead and do it. That may work once or twice, but that's it. You better learn your job. You better learn it yesterday because I'm not going to keep doing this. Can you help me with so and so? I used to tell people, can you help me pull out the manual? Pull out the job manual. I guess I'm just old school. I'm too stupid to be smart like the super smart youth and people today. They're so smarter than the stupid old preacher. I said, pull out the manual. You know what I found out? In 95% of the jobs I worked at, they had no manual. They had no idea what they were doing. I had to write manuals for this is the irony. I had to actually write a manual for the Southern California Gas Company, when we were hired back in 1980, good grief, that sounds so old. Me and Dan York had to write a manual for the Southern California Gas Company weatherization program because they didn't know what they were doing. So here was a multi-million-dollar company, and Harley Howard, a nobody, and Dan York, a better nobody. We had to sit down and write a manual for the Southern California Gas Company. I can say it over and over. The job I worked at, after that, or before that, one of them anyway, where I was working at an employment agency, they had no manual. I wrote a manual for them. Manual for Sauber service, manual for the last job I had, they had no manual. There was no instruction. So everyone kind of did whatever they wanted to do, or basically they just milked others to help them. That's ridiculous. We have an age of people that don't even have a training manual to instruct people how to do their job. And that's what we do stuff like that all the time. We see there's an instructional manual in a product. We don't even use it. Okay, so how do you know what you're doing? You don't. You don't know. But your pride won't let you figure you don't know what you're doing. We don't know what we're doing. We have to make sure that we are on our jobs, knowing our job. So I wrote manuals for me and the department. I got to the place where I got so tired of doing all this, it was time to retire. Anyway, you be sure to make sure, make very sure, and I mean this with all sincerity, make very, very sure that you're doing your job to the best of your ability. And when you do it, friends, you know, be a blessing to others. Be a blessing to the poor. Don't be a moocher. Don't leech off from people. Don't be doing anything like that at all. Just don't do it. Be a blessing, but be wise as well. God willing, tomorrow we'll be getting back into the 119th Psalm.